Welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at a video by Owen Jones on the subject of Donald Trump, because that's such a cool subject. Now, when I was splicing Owen's video up after watching and laughing at it, I noticed Tailed Feature had done a video on this. So what I'm going to do, there are going to be certain parts I think Tailed answered better than I could, and I'm going to include those, and I'm also going to link his response video in the description. Please go subscribe to him. Even for a Scot, he's alright. Fun fact, he's also a Sammich Wench alumni. Anyway, I've waffled on long enough. Take it away, Owen Jones.
If Donald Trump sets foot on British soil, let's meet him with one of the biggest demonstrations, if not the biggest, that this country has ever seen.
When he steps on British soil. For a moment there I thought you were trying to imply that our soil is somehow holy. Now, in answer to the idea of a protest or a demonstration, how about no? Because I can't be jaffed. Hashtag effort.
In January, with just 36 hours notice, we organised a demo where tens of thousands of people in dozens of towns and cities across the country took to the streets, united in opposition to the hatred, the bigotry, the racism that Donald Trump represents.
Are you kidding me? What racism does Donald Trump represent? For God's sake, he's denounced the KKK. He's blamed both sides, left and right, when they've been involved in violent altercations, i.e. right and left. Have you even seen his ex-girlfriends? He's so racist, he dated people from other ethnicities. What a racist fuck.
It stretched all the way from where I'm standing here in Parliament Square to Trafalgar Square.
Cool. Now I know where all the unemployed entitled millennials were hanging out.
Donald Trump retweeting a neo-Nazi organisation promoting anti-Muslim hatred.
That sounds terrible. What was in those tweets? Were Britain First calling for the death of Muslims? Was there any hatred or bigotry in them at all? No. There were videos. One was fake, false. The other two contained genuine footage of Muslim extremists killing people. Okay, I'll grant you that retweeting Britain First was undiplomatic, but it's likely Trump doesn't even know who Britain First are. If he'd retweeted those videos from another source, there would have been backlash, but people are focusing far too much on who he retweeted. The outrage is at Britain First and Donald Trump, rather than at those who are actually murdering people. Yeah, that seemed reasonable.
Fits into a broader pattern of a racist demagogue who has repeatedly stirred up hatred against Muslims, called of course for a Muslim ban, tried to implement one as best he could.
Muslim is not a race, genius. And yes, Donald Trump has a rather particular dislike towards Muslims, only because he's noticed, observed and been very blunt and upfront about all the terror attacks taking place around the world. He's saying what people refuse to say, and the Muslim ban that he tried to implement was the same one Obama was trying to implement with a minor alteration.
He's a man who called Mexican immigrants rapists.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Hashtag not all. You seem to have forgotten the last part of that quote you played.
Falsely claimed that thousands of New Jersey Muslims celebrated 9/11.
I read about it on the internet.
He spread racist lies about Barack Obama not really being American.
He's got a grandmother in Kenya who said he was born in Kenya at the hospital.
Okay, so there are a couple minor details I want to add to this because it's ever so slightly incorrect on the Barack Obama being born in Kenya bit. Firstly, in September 2016, Donald Trump finally admitted he believed Barack Obama was born in America. So yes, while he was riding on that little train, he eventually, finally, conceded defeat. With the conspiracy theorists that believe he was born in Kenya, some cite a tape, an interview between Barack Obama's grandmother and a man by the name of McRae, but the audio is quite heavily edited, and the man asking the questions tries to lead the elderly lady to say things he wants her to say. The second person usually cited is Malik Obama, Barack Obama's half-brother, who in March of this year tweeted out this with a birth certificate. I've linked the tweet in the description, although it's more likely this is a fraud because every time this man is asked for comment on it, he asks for 5 figures before he'll speak.
And at Charlottesville, where you had fascists who were confronted by anti-fascists.
Come on now, Owen. They're not anti-fascists. Unless they're hipsters, in which case they are ironically anti-fascists. But the correct name for them is communists.
He equated them both. He said there was violence on many sides.
You will not replace us!
And he also suggested that there were very fine people on the side of the fascists.
And he was absolutely right to do so. If he only chastised the right, he would have normalised those on the far left, which if anything would have been very wrong of him. And I'm sure there are some very fine people on the right, you know, those that obeyed the law. Those that didn't involve themselves in the fighting. I apologise for the Skype alerts in the background. Blame Christina Prime.
Plebs, forgive me, I'm sorry.
This man is a stooge for the far-right movement.
A stooge for the far right? Do you mean the same far right he has on multiple occasions denounced?
When Theresa May offered a state visit to Donald Trump, she extended an honour, a privilege that not all US presidents have had, and which no US president has been offered as quickly as she offered Donald Trump.
Are we supposed to be putting on our tinfoil hats for this segment?
Now, that helped legitimise him.
Not in the way you think. If anything, I think it gave Theresa May a perfect opportunity to try and talk him out of some of his completely insane policies. Then again, if we're going to go with the Jerusalem thing, I'll link a Skeptor video in the description. Turns out, Trump wasn't inciting any kind of war. If anything, he was just saying what was supposed to have been said 20 years ago.
He could use it as a prop, the special relationship, if you like. And we can't end up in a situation, this country, where we end up as the poodle of the United States.
The nearest we've ever come to being the poodle of the United States was during that delightful reign of Tony Blair, where he practically bent over and spread his cheeks so George Bush could stick his head up there.
If Britain is shackled to Donald Trump, we are shackled to the wrong side of history.
And we are not shackled to him. Just history, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist, tinfoil hat wearing, fedora tipping idiot.
A majority of Americans didn't even vote for him.
That's because the majority of Americans didn't vote in that election. The turnout was rather low after all.
He's increasingly despised by his own people. He's the most unpopular president since records began.
Citation needed.
How will we look to the other America, the America which reviles everything he stands for, if we're there lauding him with pomp and ceremony here in Britain?
I don't think that's how we should be looking at this. I think the way we should be looking at it is, he is the President of the United States of America. We should, will, and shall extend professional courtesy and lead by example. Kind of like how when we are attacked by terrorists, we carry on as if nothing happened. We should do the same thing when Donald Trump comes here. If you want to treat him as irrelevant, don't act like he's here.
But it's not just about Donald Trump. It's about what he represents. It's about joining those dots.
What he represents are baseless accusations by the extreme left and idiots like you who are willing to listen and believe and wear your moral outrage on your sleeve.
Because racism and fascism and scapegoating are rampant, not just, of course, in the United States, but all over the Western world. And we know, of course, that tens of millions of people have died in the past.
Please, 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 I beg you, do not compare Donald Trump to Hitler. It will turn you into a meme.
Fighting fascists and racists who once almost reduced the whole continent of Europe to rubble in a genocidal war.
This is going to be one of the very few times where I'm openly going to insult someone. You, Owen Jones, are a fucking idiot. I hope you understand, by comparing him to an actual fascist when he is anything but one. He's an idiot, a troll, yes. He is not a fascist. You're the same kind of scaremongering idiot that would accuse him of having his trigger-happy finger on the nuclear button. He's been in office for nearly a year now. He still hasn't pushed that button. I'm starting to think your bullshit is seeping through your pores. I bet everyone in London can smell it. Just through the smell of smug.
And we see today in Britain the scapegoating of immigrants who are demonised by our media, by our politicians.
By very small select parts of the media, yes. Very small though, because the majority of the media in the United Kingdom is quite liberal leaning. So you'd have to find and cherry pick a couple of very unique instances in the media where this has happened.
As being criminals and murderers and rapists and threats to our public services.
For me, I wouldn't say it was the immigrant, I would say it's the individual economic migrant that has come to this country under the guise of wanting a better life, but has instead decided that their values and their ideas, their culture and their way of life should supersede ours, so if they don't get their own way and we do as we tell them, they will instead kill themselves or kill many people by killing themselves to achieve a goal that is never going to happen and rule this country. Go fuck yourselves.
Our own Prime Minister, Theresa May, infamously sent vans emblazoned with "Go Home" around ethnically mixed communities. And when she was Home Secretary, refugees filmed themselves having sex with their partners to prove that they were gay, to avoid being deported to places where their lives could be at risk.
I'm not entirely sure what the point you're trying to make here is, because those vans didn't just go around those areas that were ethnically different. They went around the country, they went everywhere. Unless you have evidence to prove otherwise, that point doesn't hold up. And it's targeted towards those that are here illegally. Those people came here illegally because, thanks to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, the floodgates were opened and immigration went through the bloody roof, which was unsustainable and harmed our economy. Illegally being the key word.
And that's why we don't just have to take on Trump. We've got to take on Trumpism. We've got to take on that system, that rotten system that helped produce Donald Trump in the United States in the first place. That combination of social and economic injustice and rampant racism and bigotry that deflects blame and responsibility for all the problems that we face away from those at the top to the people down the street instead.
You do realise one of the main reasons Trump won in the first place was because of all the hate those normal regular people at the bottom received at the hands of the identitarian idiots. They were ostracised and had nowhere to turn, so they turned to other areas in politics and realised, oh look, there's somebody speaking quite frankly in such a way that is unpolitical, and I understand him. And your baseless accusations with the images of those select few that are in fact somewhat racist doesn't stack up. Most people can see through this. You are no better than a propaganda machine.
We can't be sure when Donald Trump will actually set foot in this country, if at all, and we may have very, very little notice, if any notice whatsoever.
February of next year, the opening of the new US Embassy. There you go. You have time to prepare. 2 months at least.
Trump and Trumpism will be defeated.
Or Trump and Trumpism will survive 2 terms in office magically and leave with dignity. Which, if happens, doesn't mean it has been therefore defeated, means he, if anything, defeated you because he managed to get the maximum amount of term time, just to piss you idiots off.
And it's up to us to take to the streets, in our hundreds of thousands, to prove it.
Word of warning though, if any of you guys decide to protest Trump, which is up to you and totally within your rights, do not get violent in front of the President of the United States. That will end one way, and it is going to end badly for you. The Secret Service don't take crap from idiots, and if anyone makes an attempt on the President's life, they will put you down. This is going to be a slightly different ending to what you're used to. Usually I play a longer outro, but that's a Christmas outro I've had for a couple of years, so yeah, I'm going to use that for the next couple of weeks. Now I want to talk briefly about the word moist, because I recently managed to start a little thing on Twitter. Let's call it the moistening. Moistening? Yes. Where I basically managed to get, after a video I did, Irate Bear to contribute. A few others were unable to, but Irate Bear did, and it was sexual.
Moist.
I then challenged Undoomed to do the same.
First we have the Irate Bear version, moist. Then a wild Undoomed strolled in, moist.
He did. Irate Bear responded,
I gotta admit, that was pretty funny. Moist.
Then the Britisher got tagged in.
Dear Mr. Undoomed, you appear to think that the correct pronunciation for this particular word of the English language is moist. But in fact, the pronunciation is simply moist.
A couple others intervened and added their 2 cents, finally ending with bearing.
Moist.
At this point, I want to get more and more people to say moist, just so I can use them as rebuttals. Yes, my moist wenches. Maybe that'll be my new thing when the Sammich mines are empty.